Hey guys, Tobin Falk, Training Northwest. We're out here at a place in the Cascade Mountains, and the reason we're out here today is to talk about the fighting uniform of a guerrilla fighter and the strengths and weaknesses of a guerrilla force versus a conventional force. So, you may wonder, why am I dressed like this? This is not the fighting uniform of a guerrilla fighter. This is my 80s Hollywood movie trope version. Growing up as a child of the 80s, when I think of guerrilla fighters, I think Sandinistas and Contras fighting drug wars in South America. And also, this comes from one of my favorite movies, Clear and Present Danger, and Willem Dafoe's character for the final prison raid in that movie. He's dressed sort of similarly to this. So this is my Hollywood version of how a guerrilla fighter dresses. The reason I've been thinking about this is twofold. We see a lot of folks on social media who like to take pictures with, they've got their expensive plate hanger and their Mitch helmet, ballistic helmet with infrared strobes and night vision and the Peltor earmuffs and whatnot. And all that stuff is good. It has its place. We'll come back to that. The second reason I have been thinking a lot about this is that the President of the United States went on TV about a month ago and said, you don't need an AR-15 to resist the government because we have F-15s, which right there is sort of a passive threat to citizens who believe in the Second Amendment, that he intends to use the United States military against us, which is really fucked up. But it got me thinking about, how do you resist a conventional force such as our own on home soil? Would you do it dressed like this? And the answer is no, you would not. And I'll tell you why. The strengths of a conventional force is that they have really powerful weapon systems, like jet aircraft, like M1A1 Abrams tanks, like MRAPs with heavy weapons mounted on top of them. When you dress like this, you identify yourself as a combatant. It makes it very easy for you to identify. We're going to reference two of Sun Tzu's more famous quotes in this, and I'm paraphrasing maybe badly, but Sun Tzu says that when your enemy is strong, you fade away and you fight when they are weak. He also says that you need to be able to move through the masses like a fish through water, or that a warrior needs to be able to move through the masses like a fish through water. So if I go walking around my community like this, am I going to be moving like a fish through water? No, I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb. So I'm going to continue talking about strengths and weaknesses, and I'm going to start doing a little bit of a uniform change here. In order for a conventional force to bring those aforementioned heavy weapons to bear, like I said, they need to be able to identify you as a combatant. That F-15 is cruising at 30,000 feet at several hundred miles an hour. The pilot cannot see you on the ground, so he's relying on somebody, whether they're hidden in some sort of a hide site or just observing from a vehicle. Someone else is going to have to observe you and identify you as a target. So again, identifying yourself as a combatant is not really a good idea if you're intending to be a guerrilla fighter. The other sort of glaring contrast between guerrilla forces and conventional forces is that conventional forces are typically occupiers, even on home soil. And what I mean by that is that they don't produce for themselves. They are not self-supporting. And the Achilles heel of any army, all the way back to Alexander the Great, Napoleon, Hitler, Operation Barbarossa, getting stalled out on the eastern steppes of Russia, is that a conventional army requires a massive logistical support chain. That F-15 Strike Eagle that the president's threatening us with is burning jet fuel at a crazy rate. It requires ground maintenance technicians, rearmament technicians, radar technicians, flight system. You get the idea. I think for every infantryman on the ground, they once told us it requires 7 support personnel supporting them. Personnel clerks, cooks, dentists, doctors. You start to get the idea that in order to field an army, you have to have 7 to 10-fold that in the rear, providing all these rear echelon support type deals or functions. A guerrilla force is self-supporting because guerrillas typically, not always, live where they're fighting. So in line with Sun Tzu saying that when the enemy is strong, you fade away, and when the enemy is weak, you fight. On a day when the enemy is strong, say you have a couple of armored vehicles roll into the main square of your town, well, that's not a day you fight. You just go about your life that day. And in that way, you are self-supporting because you don't require all these support personnel. They're already there in your community. Your community is self-supporting. So if I were to be fighting a guerrilla war, I would dress like this because this is how I go to work every day. And this is not readily identifiable by a forward observer, FO, forward observer, because I look like a blue-collar guy who's headed to work, which is exactly what I am. Now let's say that on this particular day, I'm not headed to work. I'm headed to an ambush site. And this is another critical point. A guerrilla force, again, in line with the fade away when your enemy is strong and fight when they're weak, you get to choose the point of contact. You get to choose the day you fight, which gives you a very important, what's the word? Well, shit, it gives you the initiative, which is a military way of saying momentum. You guys who are sports fans, if you're watching a football game, we typically, we can tell which team on the field has the momentum, and that team typically wins. In combat, the side that initiates contact, they are choosing the moment to fight, right? Let's say I'm laying in an ambush line, my enemy is walking through. They may know that they are inside occupied territory and that there is a potential for a fight there, but they don't know when it's coming. I, as the guerrilla fighter, get to choose the moment that that fight begins, which means I have the initiative at that moment. And I'm going to fight for as long as I have the initiative. And that ambush may be over in a matter of seconds, or it may turn into a sustained contact. If it's a sustained contact with a conventional force, at some point, that conventional force is going to gain the initiative because they have the aforementioned heavy weapons systems. At that point, you guys can't fall too in love with your equipment because you may have to set it down, melt away, and go swim through the sea like a fish through water, right? I can set this down, walk away, and I'm right back into the crowd of civilians. And this, guys, this is what your fighting uniform looks like if you're going to resist a conventional force on home soil. So it's something I definitely hope we don't have to deal with, but the fact that the President of the United States felt the need to say that, again, it's sort of a passive threat, and the purpose of the Second Amendment is not hunting. It is very specifically so that we, the citizens, we, the people, can resist an oppressive government or a tyrannical government. And when you have the President of the United States talking about using these insanely powerful weapon systems against citizens of the United States because we believe in a constitutional amendment, well, it's time to start thinking about this kind of stuff. All right, guys, that's all I got for today. Over and out.